Last year, I moved from Ann Arbor, Michigan to San Antonio, Texas, after my wife passed away, leaving me to raise our 8-year-old daughter, Michelle, on my own. I chose San Antonio to be closer to my brother and his wife so that Michelle would have family nearby. Our new house was smaller, but it suited the two of us better, and it had a swimming pool, something I have always wanted. Michelle couldn't swim yet, but I looked forward to teaching her. Within 2 weeks, we were mostly settled. Michelle loved the new house, but I felt something was missing, so I adopted a 2-year-old tabby cat named Nemo for her. They bonded instantly, and it was good for Michelle to have a loving companion after losing her mother. With about 6 weeks of summer left before school, we wanted to make the most of summer, so I had the pool cleaned and readied for our use. Michelle wasn't ready to learn to swim yet, so she stayed inside playing and having little adventures with Nemo. He followed her everywhere, keeping her happily occupied, and I was glad to see them bonding so well. One evening, while I was making dinner, I heard Michelle talking, and it sounded like she was having a real conversation. I stopped and listened. She spoke, then paused as if listening, then answered, back and forth in a way that felt more grown-up than a typical 8-year-old's pretend play. When I walked into the room, she fell silent and stared at me. I asked who she'd been talking to. She looked down, as if considering her words, then met my gaze and remained silent. I asked, "Were you talking to Nemo?" She delayed for a moment, then shook her head and told me no. I asked, "If it wasn't Nemo, then who were you talking to?" She looked down again, hesitant, then finally met my eyes and whispered, "I was talking to Sarah. She used to live here." I forced a smile. "Tell Sarah I said hello. Dinner will be ready soon." As I left the room, the exchange nagged at me, but I told myself it was just Michelle pretending to talk with an imaginary friend, and moved on. Later that night, I was jolted awake by the sound of the back door opening and closing. The clock read 1:30 a.m. I rushed to Michelle's room, but it was empty. I sprinted outside and found her standing at the edge of the deep end of the pool. I screamed, "Michelle, get away from the pool." She looked at me with a lifeless stare and then jumped in. She couldn't swim, so I dove in after her, hauled her out as she choked on water and shouted, "What are you doing? You could have drowned." Through her tears and cries, she looked up at me and said, "Sarah told me Mommy wanted me to show her I can swim." I was stunned. She was blaming an imaginary friend for doing something she knew she could never do alone, and in the middle of the night. I dried her, tucked her back into bed, and lay awake the rest of the night, unsettled and unable to stop replaying what had happened. That night haunted me for about a week, but I quickly forgot about it as no other strange incidents occurred. Things were really starting to feel normal again, and then one morning I woke up and heard her talking as if she were in conversation with someone again. I hoped that she was talking to Nemo, but when I looked at the foot of my bed, he was sound asleep. I got up and started walking over to her room, but was stopped in my tracks because her door was locked. I knocked and told her to come open the door right now. She told me that Sarah didn't want her to open the door for me. I also began to hear her window being pulled up. I rammed the door 5 or 6 times before I was able to pry it open. At the ledge of the window was my daughter, ready to jump out from the second story. She cried, "I'm going to see Mommy," and jumped. I watched in horror as my child jumped out of a second-floor window. I ran over and looked down to see her lying on the ground, crying. I rushed outside and called an ambulance. Michelle suffered a broken leg, 6 broken ribs, and a broken arm, but was lucky, in a terrible way, that she survived. Something was very wrong with that house. Michelle had never had any problems until we moved in. After she was released from the hospital, I took her and Nemo to my brother's and asked him to keep a close eye on her while I looked into the house. I knocked on a neighbor's door and asked if they knew of anything strange about the family who lived here before us. The couple exchanged a disturbing glance, hesitated, then told me that an 8-year-old girl had fallen out of a window, broken her neck, and died the previous year. I was stunned. I couldn't believe no one had mentioned it when we moved in. It seemed like an essential fact to leave out, especially since it explained why the previous residents had moved away. I began to wonder if this house was the wrong place for us to start over after my wife died. It felt like something in the home, maybe the spirit of the little girl who died there, was unsettled. I stayed with my brother for a couple of months while I searched for a new place. We eventually found a cozy townhome nearby, and since moving in, we haven't had any further incidents. My daughter has been happy, and remarkably, returned to normal after the traumatic experience at the previous house. This happened in the winter of 2004 when I was 11 years old. My name is Roman, and this story takes place at my best friend Mikey's house. It was the last day of school before winter break, and Mikey invited me over to play Halo 2 online. Pure heaven for an 11-year-old. His parents said it was okay for me to come over for pizza and spend the night gaming. After school, I asked my mom, who agreed on one condition. I had to tidy my room first. This was no problem for me as I was thrilled because I'd never spent the night at a friend's house before, and the idea of gaming all night felt absolutely epic. My mom called Mikey's mom to confirm, then told me, "They're ordering pizza soon, so let's get ready to go. I'll pick you up tomorrow at 9:30. I grinned, packed my pajamas, a toothbrush, and an extra Xbox controller, and headed out, barely able to control my excitement. My mom dropped me off at Mikey's, and I couldn't stop smiling as she honked and drove away, the perfect start to my Christmas break. After inhaling 4 slices of pepperoni pizza, I was itching to get to the basement, where Mikey's Xbox was set up. We rolled out sleeping bags on the floor and gamed for what felt like 4 hours straight. Eventually, his mom called down, "Okay, boys, wrap it up and get some shut-eye." I was tired but uneasy about sleeping in the basement, as it was unfamiliar and a little creepy. Mikey was out and snoring within minutes, but I lay awake and then heard the closet door at the end of the room open very slowly, creaking the whole way. I nudged Mikey a few times, whispering if he'd heard it. He grumbled, "It's nothing, man, just go to bed." I tried to ignore it, but within 2 minutes, the nightlight in the corner started to flicker, then went out. I nudged Mikey again and told him the nightlight had started flickering and then gone out. He mumbled, "Come on, man, don't be a baby, just go to sleep." A fear I'd never felt before washed over me. Cell phones were still new, and I didn't have one, so I couldn't text or call my mom. I didn't want to wake his parents to use their phone at that hour, but I was terrified and wanted to leave. With the nightlight out, the room was nearly pitch black, but I could still make out a shadow sliding across the wall, heading towards us. I watched it inch closer until I buried myself in my sleeping bag, trembling and trying not to make a sound. After what felt like forever, I peered out and froze. A dark, humanoid shape stood staring at me. Before I could make a sound, I bolted from the sleeping bag and ran to the adjoining bathroom. I flipped on the light and backed up against the far wall, staring at the open doorway into the dark basement. I stood there shaking for about 10 minutes with nothing happening, and slowly began to wonder if I was imagining all of this, and that there might be some logical explanation for it as well. I decided to walk back to bed. Just before I reached the door, it slammed shut in my face and wouldn't budge. I was trapped. Just then, I turned around and saw the black figure on the wall. I screamed at the top of my lungs, pounded on the door, and begged for help. Finally, the door flew open, and Mikey's parents stood there, stunned. Mikey shuffled over, half asleep and rubbing his eyes. I cried as I told them what had happened, but when we looked toward the bathroom, there was nothing. His mother only said, "Honey, you must have had a bad dream." I begged them to call my mom to come pick me up. They did, and she arrived about 30 minutes later. I told her everything that had happened, but she said the same thing. "I think you just had a nightmare, sweetie." No one believed me, not even Mikey. I know what I saw and how terrified I was. It felt real, because I believe it was real. After that night, I stopped talking to Mikey. He told other kids I'd acted like a baby and made my mom pick me up from his house while spending the night. I don't know what was going on in that house, but I know what I saw, and I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life. This happened while I was attending Appalachian State University. My girlfriend Rose and I just moved into our first apartment together, a 2-bedroom, 1,200 square foot place at the edge of campus. It was the perfect spot, close enough to walk anywhere, spacious enough to host friends, and everything felt like ours. We lived there for nearly a year with no problems, until one night when everything changed. Like most college students, we stayed up late. Our usual bedtime was between 1 and 2 a.m. That night, I checked the clock right before I drifted off to sleep. It read 2:10 a.m. I woke up at 3:01 a.m. with a sore back and neck. Rose was still asleep. My pillow was missing. Rose often stole my pillow and covers throughout the night, so I nudged her and said, "You took my pillow again, didn't you?" She glanced at her side of the bed and mumbled that she didn't have it. Puzzled, I switched on the light and searched the whole bedroom. The pillow was nowhere to be found. Oddly, I noticed that every light down the hall was on. This included the bathroom, living room, and kitchen. We had a strict bedtime routine. Double-checking the front and sliding doors were locked, shutting down the computer, turning off all the lights, and then going to bed. The only light that ever stayed on was the small bathroom nightlight that came on after the main light went off. I was baffled to find my pillow on the living room floor. I woke Rose, and we both stood there, stunned. There was no way it could have been tossed from the bedroom. The layout made that impossible, and neither of us sleepwalks. We had no explanation for how it could have ended up out there. The bigger question was, why were all the lights on? We switched them off again, double-checked the locks, and carried my pillow back to the bedroom before trying to sleep. We shrugged it off that night, mostly because we were exhausted, but by morning we were questioning everything. Did someone sneak in through a window as a prank? Mostly, I couldn't stop wondering how my pillow had ended up in the living room. For the first time since moving in, the apartment felt eerie and watched. Neither of us wanted to be there alone anymore. Exactly 1 week later, we had a second incident. We were in bed just before 2 a.m. and woke at 3:01 a.m. again to an unbearably loud noise, like a train horn blowing right at the foot of our bed. The TV was sitting on a stand about 10 feet to the left of us. Though the noise seemed to come from the foot of the bed, I instinctively screamed at Rose to turn off the TV. As we shook off the grogginess, we realized the noise wasn't coming from the television at all, and we had no explanation for what could be making that deafening sound right there beside us. Then the bed began to shake violently. I yelled at Rose to stop, but she was crying and insisting she wasn't moving at all. After about 30 seconds of deafening noise and the bed trembling as if in an earthquake, everything suddenly stopped, and the sound vanished. Rose finally stopped crying, and we sat there shaking, trying to make sense of what had just happened. It wasn't imagined, it happened, and it terrified us. As we scanned the room, the closet door creaked open a few inches. We both saw what looked like two eyes staring back. I was almost too scared to move, but I forced myself to flip on the light and fling the closet open. Nothing. Convinced our apartment was haunted, we got dressed and called my friend Chris. We didn't try to explain, as we thought it would sound unbelievable, but he agreed to let us crash on his couch. Before we left, we heard the bathroom sink running. The hot water was on, and the mirror was steamed over. As I turned off the running water, a handprint slowly appeared on the glass. We ran from the apartment in terror, leaving the door unlocked. We both agreed we couldn't stay there any longer. When we returned the next morning, we found our neighbor outside, heading to her car. I swiftly stopped her and said, "Can I ask you about this apartment?" She nodded and said, "Sure," so I continued, "Did you know the previous renter, and did they ever mention anything strange about their apartment?" Her smile vanished. "Oh no, it's happening to you too," she said. Rose and I exchanged glances, as she explained. "The woman who lived here before you knocked on my door in the middle of the night on multiple occasions, usually around 3 in the morning, begging to stay with me because she was terrified. She said it started with voices, like a TV left on low with no source. Then her bed would shake while a piercing horn sounded in her ear. She was convinced the unit was haunted. None of the rest of us here has experienced anything like that, at least not that I know of." We thanked her for sharing with us and then recounted what we had experienced. After that, we never slept in that apartment again. For the next few weeks, we crashed at friends' places and only returned during daylight when absolutely necessary. The following month, we found a new place and moved out. We could never explain the events, only agreeing that something in the apartment was targeting us. After we moved, the disturbances stopped, so whatever it was seemed tied to that particular unit. We considered warning the property manager, but worried we would sound crazy. I feel for anyone who moved in after us and may have experienced the same things that we did. Thank you for listening to the Dark Side Diaries. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving me a like and subscribe for more content.